know what kind of password they wanted.
Okay, I'm not sure. I know that Zoom just updated to Zoom 5.0 and it's requiring a lot of people to upgrade. So that's why William sent out a message asking people to try to update their Zoom. So we're a few minutes past now, so let's get rolling. I did start the Facebook Live, so it's now streaming on Facebook Live, and wanted to give everyone a chance to first introduce themselves. I'll start off first myself. So I'm Councilmember Greg Tanaka here on the Palo Alto City Council. This is actually the second meeting I'm having on this topic of the Newell Bridge. What I'd like to do is just go around and let everyone introduce themselves, as well as say just a few thoughts on this project, the proposal. So maybe I see Steve followed by Mr. Mill. So Steve, do you want to start first, and then we'll let Mr. Mill and then TCR. I don't know.
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can hear you well. Yes.
Can you hear me?
I hear you. Yes.
I might be having bandwidth problems here.
Oh, can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm Steve Bissett. I can hear you, Greg, just fine.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, no problem.
Yes.
Okay. So we hear you, Steve. I don't know if, I guess you can't hear us. I'm not sure why.
Okay, I'm Steve Bissett. I live on Fife Avenue, lived in Palo Alto since 1995 and got flooded in 1998 and was somewhat involved with a group that included Tom Rindfleisch and Stephen Monismith and Xenia Hammer to try to figure out a practical solution to this problem and help move that forward, although the efforts since then have involved a vast number of other people and efforts, but I have a direct interest.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Mill, followed by the person with initials TCR.
Okay, I'm Ted Mill. Janice is my wife. She knows how to Zoom. I don't. Okay, I don't pretend to have any great knowledge of the hydraulics of this situation. I take other people's word for it that the plans, both the one-lane road and the two-lane with the bridge lanes, are both designed to mitigate the flooding mainly caused by the intersection to the west. I've been here, I live on Arcadia Place, which is a cul-de-sac off Newell, next door to Pitland, for any of you who know the area. We were here in '98. I've been here since 1960. And we were not flooded out. We were very fortunate. Everybody else in our block got some kind of damage, and we did not. Not reflected in any skills that I had, for sure. But it was a traumatizing experience at the time. I sure as hell would like to do whatever possible to avoid a repercussion, a repeat of that process. And I have limited knowledge of the details. I recognize Steve's name among the various emails I've gotten. I think Xenia, I believe, has also written on something about the Alt 1, Alt 2 business. I have strong opinions about this Alt 1 proposal, and I will simply say, I think it stinks, and I think it's a cover for something else, but I'll let other people participate at this point.
Okay, thank you, Ted. TCR followed by Nancy and Rob.
Yes, I'm Tom Rindfleisch. The reason for TCR is my name is very long and doesn't fit on the screen very well. I'm a emeritus senior research scientist from Stanford. I was flooded in 1998. I live on Tevis Place across from Eleanor Party Park, and was one of the principals in the neighborhood group that Steve Bissett referred to, and with my colleague at Stanford Civil Engineering, Stephen Monismith, we have been working for a good 20 years looking at modeling of the creek and what kinds of solutions might apply to containing the flooding. I also participated for 4 years with Stanford's study of the Searsville Dam, looking at ways that it could be modified to help mitigate flooding downstream. And that resulted in a very elaborate study of the creek by an outside engineering firm that has informed my interests and knowledge of this process. So that's me.
Thank you. Nancy Robb, followed by Hamilton Hitchens.
Hi, I'm Nancy Wong, and this is my husband, Rob Lipschutz, and we live near to the Chaucer Bridge. So we were quite familiar with what happened in '98. We fortunately were not flooded, but came really, really close. We think that we've been following with interest for about 22 years now, all the meetings, considerations, options that could happen with the Chaucer Pope Bridge. And I also attended a meeting regarding the Newell Bridge, in which I heard a lot of the citizens who live near there and their concerns.
This just to throw in, I think I think the process of doing the EIR was really well thought through. They considered a lot of options, and I think it was this is the way to move this kind of thing forward. And I think given the and I think it's we support alternative 2, and think it's been things have been well considered. I think the idea of doing nothing is just, it's a non-starter. It will be at this again for the next 22 years.
Great, thank you guys. Hamilton, followed by Zena.
I was actually here. We had just bought our house right before the flood of '98. And I think it's really hard to imagine just how dramatic it was unless you experienced it. I woke up in the morning at 3 and was wondering what that noise is. And I looked out my window and Channing was a river, and it continued to flood during the night. And at one point it was up to my mid thighs when I was standing in the street, and the water came all the way up to our door sill. We were lucky. We didn't have over the floor flooding, unlike 400 neighbors' homes in my neighborhood. And for each one of those homes, they had to move out for 9 months while they remodeled their house, which was completely trashed because there's mud and everything in it. And it's very disruptive for the kids' lives as well. Fortunately, no one died, although some people did wake up when the water reached their beds. They woke up. It was really, especially in some of the areas where it doesn't just flow over. I have about 1.5 minutes of reasons why you should approve this project. I don't know if this is the right time to say that.
Well, I think we're going to talk more about that, but this is just brief introduction. And
this is just an introduction, yeah. So at the time, I formed the Creek Action Committee with Kevin Fisher. And 22 years later, after tons of public input, review, and deliberation, they've really thought about all the options and all the trade-offs and what's the best solution. And that's how the staff came to alternative 2. But it's not been a rushed or ill-considered by any means.
Okay, great. Zena, followed by the person whose phone number ends with 71. Zena, you're muted.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
All right. My name is Xenia Hammer. I live on Sharon Court in Palo Alto, really close to the intersection of Channing and Newell. And I think right behind Mr. Mills and Arcadia, we're neighbors. So I support this project very strongly. I've been involved in this for the past 20 years. This is a well thought out project needed for flood control. The proposed project Build Alternative 2 is an excellent compromise all around. Strongly supported, agree with all the other comments.
Okay, thank you, Zena. And then the person whose phone number ends with 71.
I guess that's me, Norm Beamer. I'm the president of the Crescent Park Neighborhood Association, and I got involved in the neighborhood association after the flood in '98. I was on the periphery of the neighborhood group that others have referred to. I attended their meetings, and then somehow, I can't quite remember how, eventually became president of the neighborhood association. And I and Tom Rindfleisch and other members of the steering committee of the neighborhood association have appeared quite a few times before the council, urging, and also before the JPA, at various critical milestone points, trying to push the peanut along to finally get something done after 22 years. And this particular moment in time is just a repetition of multiple previous occasions where something is about to be decided, and suddenly people come out of the woodwork who are living near the bridge or who are otherwise have some, I'll call them pet peeves, to try to throw a roadblock into the process. And so what I might call the silent majority of people who were flooded out or who are threatened by the flood maybe aren't as vocal, although in this call we're trying to be vocal. The point is that we just can't have any more delays. It's been 22 years. The objections to the two-lane bridge, I think, are facetious. They're just not based on facts. The EIR concluded that the two-lane bridge would not significantly affect traffic or speeding. The one-lane bridge, on the other hand, would create a bottleneck that would cause traffic to be exacerbated along University. The current bridge, although it's narrow and is obsolete according to the State Department of Transportation, actually has a perfectly decent capacity for traffic. And so it's not acting as a roadblock or deterrent to traffic. And so logically, a new bridge that has to be wider in order to comply with state standards would not be any worse. It might be safer. It might be more comfortable to be passing another car coming in the other direction, but it's not going to significantly increase traffic. So the objections about traffic and speeding, I think, are just not based on reality. On the other hand, the bridge has to be replaced in order to allow for the flood control project to continue. Right now, it's artificially blocking the creek, and although it doesn't create a dam now, because the Chaucer Bridge also is artificially blocking the creek, and it's upstream of the Newell Bridge. In order to fix the Chaucer Bridge, you've got to first fix the Newell Bridge. So it's part of the process. It's part of the steady step-by-step solution that's been very slowly been followed over the past. It's really only the past 10 years that anything has actually been done. And the progress is slow, but at least it is some progress, and we're very happy to see that the 101 bridge is fixed, and downstream of 101 is fixed, and so the next step is Newell. And so I'm just hoping that Council approves the EIR and that things proceed expeditiously.
Okay, thank you, Norm. Okay, so let's just have more of a free-for-all discussion at this point. And it sounds like most people on this call, at least from what I could tell, support going forward, right? I think everyone that spoke seems to be generally in favor. So I guess who would like to summarize, or maybe someone could start summarizing, and then this is the reasons why we should go forward. So Hamilton, do you want to just kind of quickly summarize why we should go forward?
Yes, and other people certainly please feel free to add on. Alternative 2 is the smallest configuration that Caltrans will fund, with Caltrans provide 8.5% of the project cost and Santa Clara Valley District providing the rest. And Greg, I know as someone who's fiscally responsible, the reality is we wouldn't pony up 11 or 12 million to do this bridge if it wasn't getting subsidized, especially at the expense of another project. But everyone who's doing alternative one, that's what they're asking you to do. Take 11 or 12 million away from other projects and put it to this project, which in a sense is kill the project. It's really, when they say alternative one, the net result would be no project is the alternative they're proposing, because you're not going to spend 11 million out of the instead of a fire station or something else. In addition, alternative two is the smallest configuration acceptable by the city of Palo Alto, since the bridge is under the shared jurisdiction and Palo Alto alone cannot decide the configuration. It must be mutually agreed with East Palo Alto. Increased traffic is another concern by some neighbors, but the traffic study found the new bridge would not increase traffic, and this study was verified by Caltrans. In addition, since that traffic study was completed, the city then did a project for traffic light synchronization on University Ave, which significantly decreased the backup on University and reduced diversion to Newell. So the traffic conditions are actually better than when the traffic study was done. In addition, one of the things that's changed since the original project is they've left the current bridge alignment, which acts as a big speed deterrent, because you have to do this really sharp turn from East Palo Alto in order to get onto or off the bridge. And in addition, the city of Palo Alto has agreed to do a follow-on traffic study after the bridge is complete to make sure it doesn't include increased traffic or speed. However, the solution is really simple. You could just throw a speed bump on the Palo Alto side of it anyway, if you're concerned about that. I mean, that's just so easy to do. You might even just consider doing it anyway. So the mitigation is trivial. This bridge adds bicycle lanes to facilitate bike commuters. Remember, there's no bike lanes, there's no pedestrian sidewalk in the current bridge. A growing number of East Palo Alto residents are Stanford grad students, Stanford staff, Stanford hospital workers, as well as Palo Alto workers. This new bridge adds critical bicycle infrastructure as well, which will be more important if there's further development on that side as well. I mean, the big constraint for that section of East Palo Alto is actually parking, as you know. We've waited 22 years for this upgrade. So, I hope we approve it. It's the smallest alternative. It's fully funded by outside sources. It provides increased flood protection and increased bicycle infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything that Hamilton missed that someone would like to add in terms of why we should do this?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I would like to add, I agree with everything that Hamilton said. It's a really well thought out project, good compromise. I just want to add that East Palo Alto and Palo Alto both have to agree. From East Palo Alto's perspective, that section of East Palo Alto only has 3 access points: Woodland, Bayshore, and Newell. You cannot, you need that access point for East Palo Alto, and East Palo Alto is on record that what's proposed is the minimum acceptable. And they were actually advocated for larger alternatives. So this is already a good compromise. And it's a responsible thing to do from flood perspective and compromise with our neighbors. Tom, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to back off a little bit and look at this just from the strategic decision point of view that is facing the council. Can I share a screen with you to go over some points?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
So, okay, now
I don't see anything.
There we go.
I don't think you're sharing it.
Yeah, just a minute. Okay, can you see this now?
Yep.
Okay. The first point has to do with rationale of the various groups, and I think we can skip that. The second point is one that I think is crucial. I think the council is at the crunch time of having to make a decision now. We've had the same arguments for more than 10 years about the Newell Bridge. And the only thing that has changed is that we have some new people joining into the discussion, have no idea what happened in the past, and are resetting to square one, so that we're going to go through the circle again another few times and delay another 10 years. For me, the crunch time is here because the pumps are primed to finally work up to upgrading the Pope Chaucer Bridge, which is the key point of the flooding that invaded Crescent Park and Duveneck St. Francis and so on, injuring like 1,400 homes and costing at the estimate at that time $28 million, and it's now been estimated up to 40 million. So the point of where we are is we have a workable engineering design, we have environmental approval and permitting pending, we have shared funding with Caltrans and Santa Clara Valley Water District Measure B. Palo Alto has no way to fund this project in excess of $10 million on its own if we do not accept alternative 2 that has been promoted in this very lengthy studied EIR. And finally, doing an infrastructure project now is exactly what we need because it creates badly needed jobs. Further delay is going to risk putting the whole project on hold indefinitely. And the consequence of that is that Palo Alto is putting another 1,500 homes at risk of life and property, and it's exposing itself to a horrendous liability suit under the inverse condemnation doctrine that holds that California agencies are responsible for damages caused by their equipment and infrastructure, whether they acted negligently or not. That's what got PG&E into bankruptcy. Palo Alto paid something like $3 million in damages after the 1998 flood. And that's as compared to a $40 million loss. And they have known about the flooding hazards for the creek for more than 20 years now. And I believe this will expose them to a much higher penalty. The dilemma over the Newell Bridge project involves 4 main stakeholders who cannot agree after 10 years and will not agree after another 10 years. Palo Alto, East Palo Alto, San Francisco Creek flood zone residents, and Newell Edgewood neighbors, with others imagining they can stop unwanted development. And so this means that we really need to go forward now. The council, I think, has to come to a decision that says up or down. And if it's down, there are really long-term consequences of that that are going to be very negative. I do understand the concerns of the neighbors of the Newell Edgewood group. And I think that the alternative 2 steers a fair and accommodating a compromise between the various stakeholders. And I think, as Hamilton said, we can put traffic control things into place as simple as a sharp bump, speed bump, that is, for example, at Palo Alto High School parking lot that protects student walkways. And that will force cars to stop essentially without any kind of traffic signals or whatever. So I believe that we're really at a crucial point here, and delay is the most difficult and egregious kind of way of saying no. And so delay is simply not warranted here, is not a possible outcome.
Okay,
I'm
great.
going to interrupt here. Greg, why don't you tell us what the situation is with respect to the council and their probable vote tomorrow? Is it tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Yeah, so I don't know how I haven't talked to any of my colleagues, so I have no idea what they think. But I do know that, I don't know how many of you guys actually watched the video I had on this topic before. It was maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, but it was a group of people who felt exactly the opposite of you guys. So, it is. Did anyone see that video?
Yes, with Ball and Rappaport.
Yeah, we've seen parts of it, and we've tried to refute some of their arguments.
Okay, yeah. So it's unfortunate that not both of you guys could be on the same call, because it would have been really good to hear.
Well, we've been in plenty of town hall meetings together and stuff.
And,
Okay.
And I've heard those, we've all heard those before.
and they're
Okay.
members of the Crescent Park Neighborhood Association, and we've been exchanging lots and lots of emails internal to the neighborhood group.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of discussion.
But you have to be careful about a few people who are very vocal as opposed to, you know, looking at the overall impact of the project, who benefits and who loses as a whole.
Sure, Zena, what do you
Like the
think?
people on this show today.
Sorry, Zena, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so in evaluating the input from folks who live on Edgewood and in the immediate neighborhood of the Newell Road Bridge, you have to keep in mind that those folks are not in the flood zone. And that is because of the geology of the creek. The creek banks are higher than the surrounding land. And so the water flows away from the creek. And so what happens right now is that most of the water is going to get diverted at Pope Chaucer and flow away from those folks who live next to Newell Road Bridge towards other parts of Crescent Park and Duveneck St. Francis and Greer Park, et cetera, other parts of Palo Alto. So the folks who are advocating for, you know, build alternative one, which is really boils down to doing nothing, are just fine with the status quo. And they're fine with doing nothing. But the rest of us need flood protection. And doing nothing is not a good option.
Well, let me
And
ask you
please
this.
keep that in mind. Please keep that self-interest in mind when evaluating public input.
Xenia, let me ask you something. Who is, or who are the people that are supporting the Alt One? Are they the people on Edgewood, or are they scattered among?
Most folks live really close to Newell Road Bridge. And the best thing to answer that is there's been a lot of email correspondence on our neighborhood list. And it's, you know, it's probably best to just scan through that. And I'm happy to help you do that after the conference call.
Mr. Mills, there are two groups that have to be kept in mind. One are the people who live near Newell and Edgewood, who are going to be affected by the construction and so on. And then there's another group who believe that having a minimal bridge is effectively building a moat between East Palo Alto and Palo Alto that will prevent any future big property development. And with Scott Wiener and other people advocating development and the incredible money to be made in that development, I don't think having that moat there is going to make a damn bit of difference in terms of who does the development. It's going to happen anyway. And so I think that having the alternative two is not going to really get to the security that they want against future development.
There is a lot of, right on. There's also some folks that have reasonable concerns about traffic. And like Hamilton said, you know, monitoring traffic, including traffic calming measures are all perfectly wonderful things to do as part of Build Alternative 2.
So what do you think? You guys are a lot more experienced in this issue than myself, but what do you guys think is their number one, the people who oppose this, what do you think their number one issue is?
You want the surface answer or the underlying answer?
There's some things we don't feel comfortable saying.
No, there's a small group of immediate adjoining neighbors who don't want the disruption of the construction, and they don't want to see a new, larger bridge out their window. And they're the ones that are really the primary organizers and advocates and people that, you know, have just really pounded this. And they have brought in a fair number of additional people who are concerned about traffic. And as I've said before, I don't think the traffic concerns are well grounded. I don't think there's any chance of any significant change in traffic, and I think the EIR bears that out. But nonetheless, people that have children who live on Newell, any possibility, any suggestion that there might be more traffic, they'll oppose. But the bottom line is the overwhelming majority of people in Crescent Park and in the surrounding neighborhoods want this flood control to happen. And this is the only way to do it.
So William's pinging me saying that we're out of time here, but I wanted to ask you guys a few quick questions here. So one of them is, so this bridge has to be a certain size because of regulations saying that bridges have to be a certain size. Is that basically the
It's the smallest size that meets the Caltran requirements, which is it requires a sidewalk, bike lane.
Yeah, and let me just chime in here that as a practical matter, the idea of delaying to do a further study of a one-lane bridge option is facetious. It's a project-killing option. There is no chance that a one-lane bridge in this day and age would ever get built or funded anywhere in America. I think there are 94 one-lane bridges in the U.S. and almost all of them are on the list of historic places. So what proposal 2 does, or build option 2 does, is replace an existing 2-lane bridge that's very dangerous with a new 2-lane bridge that's safe but has approximately the same net carrying capacity in the context of that zigzag intersection which it's in. So it really doesn't increase traffic flow. If it did, it would affect me. It would affect our neighborhood because all that traffic goes somewhere. And I think it's just a misconception that this would cause additional traffic flow. But keep in mind that there's no reason or justification to delay in order to study the one-lane option, because there's zero chance that a one-lane option would ever get funded and built.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be a pointless exercise. And also the idea that, well, but we at least need to take time to listen to people who haven't been heard. This is the most over-vetted, over-outreached, over-delayed project I've ever seen, and there's no justification for doing any more of that whatsoever.
Just keep in mind that the one-lane proposal requires traffic lights to alternatively allow traffic from one direction and then the other. The EIR says there would be 6 separate traffic lights involved. I don't quite know how they would be arranged.
Well, that's what they do today. That's what is done today when the highway department has to provide a detour on the highway or on the roadway.
There's no chance of it ever happening. It's a horse and buggy era concept, a one-lane bridge.
I mean, I can just imagine the backups that would extend all through the neighborhood into University Avenue and the side streets and so on.
So I understand the neighborhood concerns about traffic. We share those concerns. I just think they're misplaced.
There's something else going on here, though. I'm of the school that believes that underneath all of this, there's a sociological issue involved, which I haven't heard really explicitly stated here. To what extent do you think that's a problem? After all, we've got a lot of working class people over there on limited incomes, as opposed to what's on this side of the bridge.
I think some of us just understand what you're getting at, but we probably think that discussion is counterproductive.
Well, I'm not interested.
Even if we agree.
I'm just raising it as.
Greg, as you look to make your decision, another thing is to look at what the committees, which I think you take, you respect, are advising. So for example, the Architecture Review Board was the last board to review this, and they voted unanimously to send this to council with a recommendation for preferred option number alternative 2. So it was unanimous among the ARB.
Okay.
Greg, could I say one more thing about the financing part?
Sure, but one thing is we're we're in overtime right now, so when we're saying that we got to start the other call. So why don't you go ahead, and then that'll have to be the final comment, and then I have to go on to the next office hour.
I'll try to be brief. Sure. This has to be viewed in terms of the overall system problem of solving the Pope Chaucer Bridge problem. And if we refuse or somehow torpedo the funding from Caltrans and Santa Clara Valley Water District, that means Palo Alto is going to have to pick up themselves funding $10 million for this bridge. There's another $30 million that has to go into the project upstream to get to the Pope Chaucer Bridge. to get Palo Alto off the hook of this flooding stuff. And that means there's an extra 10 million if we don't take the Caltrans stuff. So there is every incentive. It would be foolish not to take the Caltrans funding to get this off the ground finally and to get this flooding problem off everybody's radar screen.
Okay. Guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your weekend to chat with me about this. I loved actually hearing the other side as well, because I heard one side the other weekend. So I'm hearing the other side today, which is great. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your patience and thank you for your participation in the governments of Palo Alto.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thanks,
guys.
Greg.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.